Hello again there, my good YouTubers. I just wanted to do a quick, well, it's not going to be quick, I don't think it's going to be quick, but want to do a video for you to really go into the details of the main arguments that I keep hearing over and over again across YouTube and web pages, news outlets regarding the init systems on Linux, particularly that of the SystemD init boot up stage on Linux. Now, I think a lot of people are reading articles on the internet and then they're, in a sense, I'm calling it perverting them. They're literally perverting the information that they're receiving about what it is that is a problem, and rather than finding a way to fix it, what they're doing is exploding it and sending it into all different sizes of proportions rather than actually looking at where the problem lies. Now, I recently posted a comment on the bottom of a video of a particular channel that was, slating everybody that's against SystemD. And obviously, as I say, everybody who is against SystemD is obviously slating them, and literally it's getting absolutely nowhere. But without further ado, I think what we need to do is we need to actually clarify this issue once and for all. Now, let me point out quickly that this is not saying that SystemD is better than OpenRC or OpenRC is better than SystemD. They all have their, greatness where they have their greatness. The problem comes into things when, people have been saying what they've been saying and shooting whatever garbage it is that they're trying to say about it to obviously fuel their side of the story. And what I want to point out here is the both sides of the story and understanding what it's all about. So I've obviously taken, I've copy and pasted one of the comments that I've made to try and explain it all, and it was quite a long comment, so I thought I'd make a video to really point this out. Now, the SystemD is a pretty reasonably well built program. It's it works. It's quite robust from what I've experienced from it, and where I've tried when I've tried the program and the eyes and the the way it works. So it is pretty nice. It's well thought out, well programmed. Now, the real crucial factors of the way that what people are arguing about is that SystemD handles things very differently to the traditional way that the GNU Linux operating system has handled the init process. And the way it deals with it is far more bloated, which is where people are saying, well, SystemD is bloated. Well, technically it is. It's not necessarily a bad thing that it's bloated the way it is, because it does do a lot more things, but the program is built to deliver a high level of performance, much more stability, handle the booted up programs that you're going to be running, whatever they may be, power management, kernel module loadings, things like this, and then actually handle those and deal with those in a active manner. And when we say active manner, what that means is that SystemD, in a sense, monitors and checks and looks after the program rather than with some of the other init scripts from OpenRC or sysvinit, stuff like that, will just generally load the program and let go of it, and that's it. And it's in there, it's loaded. Everything else, it doesn't care about. That's the point where technically the init scripting programs like sysvinit and so on and so forth just go to sleep, and they just don't do anything more, which is perfectly fine. It's very simple, it's very easy, it does the job. You can go in there, start, stop everything very simply. Everything else is then handled pretty much by whether it be the dbus, the actual program itself, and so on and so forth. So you have the element of simplicity with the original init system. SystemD brings in more complexity. With that complexity come extra features and extra things that I think will benefit users, servers, administrators, generally everybody or anybody that uses the GNU Linux platform. But it also brings in problems. And those problems are that SystemD has implicated backward compatibilities to be able to use programs that haven't been built to be used with SystemD, but obviously have come from the previous generation of the init startup stages, and be used into SystemD. But the problem begins is that when people are developing, let's say, a new program that is to be started up at boot up, and that program is predominantly built for SystemD, you can't take that program that's now working perfectly with SystemD and use it with OpenRC or SystemVinit. It's basically stuck to be used with SystemD. Now that in the GNU Linux world goes against the grain for obvious reasons. So there has to be a way, or there has to be a development or an idea of thought of bringing, let's say, for instance, the OpenRC init load up system up to date, so that modules that are loaded and built to be loaded through SystemD can literally just be taken from that platform or that system of loading the modules and be used with OpenRC, so that they can be loaded with OpenRC just as much as they can be with SystemD, and vice versa. Which brings me to the first massive confusion people are having with understanding what people are actually meaning when they're saying that it's not portable. Now, in most cases in computer software, when people say portable, they kind of mean, can you take a program from GNU Linux and then compile it and use it on Microsoft Windows? Now, although that is correct statement to do, because that is being portable, moving it from one platform to another platform, in the sense where we're using the word for portable on this, what we're actually meaning is portable to be moved from the SystemD interface to OpenRC interface, and as in from the OpenRC interface to the SystemD interface. At the moment, it can generally, in the most of the way, only go one way, which is obviously from the OpenRC / SystemVinit stages into SystemD, but then things that are done on SystemD can't go into the other ones. So SystemD isn't respecting, in a sense, the other particular boot up programs, which brings in the further problem of what the user wants to choose to do. Now, the user may wish to choose to use OpenRC, or the user may choose to use SystemV init, or the user may choose to use SystemD. That is the user's choice. It should not be the distribution's choice. It should not be the programmers of SystemD or OpenRC or SystemV init's choice. It's the user's choice. The user can choose to use any of it. If he's perfectly happy with scripting, then he can use OpenRC, SystemV init, whatever, if he's happy with that. If he is more happy and more suited with using the system CTL, as in the system control, with SystemD, then he should have the choice to choose. The problem, again, as we've stated before, begins when the person chooses which init system he wants to use. He then is in a sense forced out of using one program from another program, because that one will only run in that environment, but that program won't run in another environment. And on the GNU Linux platform, again, that is a big no-no. I go on in my comments that I placed here towards the end, at the base, which to explain, you know, how other projects have gone around dealing with this. And the best example I've got here is the GNOME and KDE. See, some people like GNOME, other people like KDE. You know, they're both very popular graphical user interfaces, or GUIs as many people would prefer to place them. But you have programs that are built in, let's say, for GNOME, and because they're built in GNOME, they use the Advanced Programming Interface, or API, that is the GNOME GUI. So how do we get a GNOME program to run in KDE? Well, you could then start another project and call it the KDE application that you've moved over, and then you've got two project trees that really are silly, because when somebody develops something for GNOME, then somebody else has got to figure out a way of converting that and making sure that it works on KDE. Where the easiest way to do is to have a universal API that communicates with both of them, and usually we call these the GTK or the Qt. And these are libraries that for GNOME you can use the GTK, and then you'll use all of those levels in the libraries, and that GTK will, you know, generally run that program in GNOME, but the GTK can also be installed, and that will mean that the program now will also run in KDE, because it's pulling the elements from the GTK, which is the GNOME toolkit. So you've got this interchangeable compatibility between the two. Qt was another API that was formed, and KDE chose to use it. So most KDE applications, if you wanted to run them on GNOME, you would, you know, make sure you have Qt installed, or the correct version, whether it's Qt 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and that program would use that library and therefore run perfectly fine on GNOME, and vice versa. Now, with SystemD, at the present moment, there is nothing like that. So it's either SystemD or SystemD, and that's it. You don't actually have any other, you know, any other way of getting a program that is built to use SystemD to get it to run on anything else. And this, again, can't be stressed enough that this goes well against the grain, because as I also went to mention in my comment, that you know, it's exactly the same as Microsoft. Microsoft created a custom package that they call their platform, and this platform that Microsoft's done is embedded to them to, in a sense, create their own monopoly. If they can get people to use their platform, develop on their platform, use their API, their Advanced Programming Interface, that basically means that their program is effectively running on their platform, and it's very difficult to take that program from their platform and then move it to a different platform like Linux, for instance. That obviously requires hacks and things like that, like such as Wine, which we use on Linux, to basically fool the application into thinking that all the Windows libraries are actually there, and it thinks that it is actually running on a Microsoft Windows platform when it's actually not. It's actually pulling it from libraries that we've deliberately put into a specific folder structure that basically fools the program. Feeds it like inaccurate information, but it thinks it's getting the right information. Regardless, that's again, that's a sort of a hack, a way to get around it, and that's certainly not perfect. So the problem here that we've got with SystemD is SystemD has not made any, or the project itself has not made any attempt to push any of its compatibility and interchangeability to any of the other projects. It's just basically been incredibly selfish and allowing every project from every other every program from every other project to run with itself, but not allowing any of the other programs to be able to run its stuff, if that makes any sense. So it's kind of like a selfish way of doing it, and that's pretty much the main focused area of concern that a lot of GNU Linux users are faced with at the moment, which is why they're not humongously a big fan of the SystemD. The other area that concerns a lot of people with the SystemD is the level of transparency. And it's not as transparent as the previous versions, because when you've got a scripting style init system, you pretty much edit absolutely every area of the init system. With SystemD, there's quite a large area of the program which is compiled. That doesn't mean it's a binary blob. You've still got access to the source code, but once the source code's compiled, it's obviously turned into its binary format, and would require you to change whatever part it is in the source code, then have to recompile it, reinstall it back into its position to overwrite the previous binary, and then reboot the computer system. So the argument that people have got about having to, it's a bit like Windows, having to reboot the system rather than actually restart the services, is just that. It's not actually that humongously big problem, because the amount of times that you're probably going to need to do that is probably not that many. That said, when you're debugging something, you can't find a problem, from experience, and I do speak from experience here, you may end up with situations like that and be like, hang on a minute, you think you fix it, you didn't fix it, there's another problem that crops up, and so on and so forth. And if that's on a mission critical server, it's a pretty hefty annoyance. So it's fixed a lot of problems that the previous init systems had, but it's brought in a new set of problems that previously were not problems with the old ones, obviously, and of course. So it's not that the SystemD is bad, it's not that it's evil, it's not that it's a pile of garbage, rubbish and not worth bothering with. It's just the fact that it's got still a lot of issues that, need to be looked at. They need to be attended to. and there's not to say that they won't be looked at or won't be attended to. It depends on the contributions to the project and the project maintainers and developers and so on and so forth, to see where they want the project to go. They continue to be selfish and not find a way of being compatible with the other init systems and respecting the user's rights to choose whichever init system they want to use, because they might not fancy using all of the extra features that are provided with SystemD, then they've got to respect that. And there's always a way of doing it. Again, I go into my comment really where I actually say down here that SystemD have taken a tough challenge, which they have do, and I call the people who are perverting this information perverts, as they rightfully are, and the perverts perverting the truth. And I also go to say that I cannot for the life of me understand why. It's not like you are getting money for it, or are you? Which is a reasonable question, because why on earth would they want to pervert this information unless somebody's paying them to do it? But they really need to quit it. And I further say, I do hope they invent a great way to deal with the complexity and bring it all together, much like Tim Berners-Lee did when he created the web, which is a very true statement as far as I'm concerned, because what I'm trying to say there is that when Tim Berners-Lee created the web, you had internet protocols, communication protocols, database of information, of masses of information that were all different. And you had to have one kind of system installed with one kind of protocol and one kind of whatever to view that data. And then the guy over, in the next block, for instance, had a different one, and he had to view his data, in a different way with different protocols and whatever. And to bring all of that data together was very difficult, because each one was incompatible. One couldn't fit with the other one because they were arranged in different ways. The databases were different. They used different languages to communicate, different programming languages, different scripting languages, all sorts of different things, lots of different problems. So he came up with the HTML, which is the hypertexting middle language. It worked. It was able to, the HTML read one database perfectly fine and was able to display it, and it read the other database in a different form in the same way and displayed it in exactly the same way. However, it wanted to be built, into this web page. And it works really, really well. And it was like the universal communicator for them all. That's the same sort of thing, the problem that you've got between the SystemD at the moment and the rest of the init systems. You've got this complexity of like, well, hang on a minute, if I develop my program that I need to be started up and I do it for SystemD, that means anybody that's using any of the other init systems can't use it. But if I make it for the other init systems, that means it will work on those, and then SystemD would just use it. Stuff like that. These are obviously considerations and things that they do. But obviously, in one of the videos they commented on, one of the things that they mentioned was a SystemD dependent module or plugin, whatever you want to call it, were called LoginD, which was a dependency required by the GNOME desktop. Now, there's where you start seeing the real problems, because the LoginD, for it to get the LoginD to work on any of the other init systems, that would require you to recode it, reprogram it, do all sorts of, which basically fork the project maybe and start a separate project. So then you've got two projects of the same thing, which make things much more complicated and much more problematic in package management, and providing this freedom to the user to choose which way he wants to go with it. So that's a clear indication of kicking up the problems, and a lot of people at the moment are actually taking that and perverting it and going, well, somebody can recode it, they can refork the project, and blah blah blah. But that's not what it's about. You're missing the whole point altogether. The point is that it's got to, when you've got to do something, it's got to have compatibility with each project. And if somebody comes along and, let's say for instance, wants to make a system F instead of a system D, and a totally different developer, a totally different project or whatever, that is a new init system, then that's got to be compatible with all the past ones, and also got to be able to make itself compatible with all of the previous ones. That is the idea, or the idealistic model in the GNU Linux system, to be able to do that. And you might think, well, that's insane. Well, yes, it is, which is why I stated that the SystemD has taken on a pretty tough challenge with this. And, I wish them all the best of luck, and I think they're doing really, really damn well so far. I'm quite impressed with the way that SystemD has come up, through the developments over the past few years. But again, I'm not a fan of the SystemD. Doesn't mean I hate it. It doesn't mean I'm against it. I just understand that there is still very amount of hurdles that they need to jump over and resolve before it's anywhere near a stage that can really be put into any system. Now, the next thing that I wanted to come across, which is another thing that I've heard mentioned, is SystemD on Gentoo. This is actually quite a big one for recent events, because everybody is saying, well, SystemD, why don't they adopt it as their default? Or why don't Gentoo adopt it as their default? Sorry. Well, why should Gentoo adopt it as their default? Because Gentoo doesn't really have a default. Gentoo is a distribution that provides option and flexibility to the user, especially upon installation and even after installation. The Gentoo system is saying to the user, hey, look, you've got sysv in it here, you've got OpenRC here, and you've got SystemD there. You choose which one you want. You can't use all of them at the same time, obviously, because that's just silly. That's like trying to, drive 3 cars all at the same time without any kind of link between them. Your arms, one, aren't long enough. 2, you have to sit in one of the cars, so you can't, when they're travelling at speed, you can't exactly jump between the cars. So it's a stupid concept anyway. I mean, why would you want to drive 3 cars at the same time? It's silly. So you pick one of the init systems and you choose that. It's not up to Gentoo as the distribution or their developers, package maintainers, or whatever. It's not up to them to tell you what init system you should run. It's not for them to do that. It's for them just to make sure that you've got SystemV init, OpenRC, and SystemD available to you so that you can install it. Or, you know, any user of Gentoo can go, oh, well, we haven't got this init system in the portage tree. So then they can create an e-build and suggest it to the maintainers to have it put into the portage tree, so that then everybody else has, like, let's say, the fourth option or fifth option, or however many it would count up to be. That's how Gentoo works. So to turn around to the Gentoo system and say, why has Gentoo not made it their default? You know, they're just stupid, is kind of making you look like a stupid person, because you haven't got a goddamn clue what the hell you're talking about. It's, as I said, Gentoo allows you to choose whichever you do, and the SystemD is in the Gentoo portage. There is also the kernel patch, which is in with the Gentoo sources, which allows you to, on the kernel menu config, you can go in there and you can select between either the init or the OpenRC section. So it can either hand itself off to OpenRC or hand itself off to SystemD, or you can actually enable them both and then have that compiled in the kernel, and then just install whichever one you want, as and when you want. So you can actually jump to OpenRC at one point in time, and then if you want, you can jump over to SystemD and use that for a bit and then jump back. You know, that's the flexibility that you have in the Gentoo system, which is very rare amongst the other distributions. So again, you know, people who keep shouting about, you know, SystemD and Gentoo adopting it, this, that, and the other, as I say, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. It's all up to the user, and that's the way the GNU Linux system is supposed to work anyway. It's the user who's in control of his software and his computer. It's not the developer, the maintainers, or the distribution that's in control. It's the user who's in control. And as soon as any distribution starts to take that control away from the user, then it's a bad distribution. As soon as a program starts to take that control away from the user, it's a bad program. And this is the real crux, bottom line of SystemD. SystemD has, the way it works and the way it's been programmed so far, takes away the levels of choice and, in a sense, a small amount of freedom in the way that it works from the user, but provides additional features in its place, which is kind of the exact same model as Microsoft has been doing ever since they've started and went into business back during the days of DOS, and then further into Windows and Windows 95 and 98 and NT and 2000 and blah 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 blah. So, you know, it's a very challenging, difficult situation to be able to please all parties on this. But the one thing that has to be remembered, and the one thing that has to be imprinted in everybody's mind when we're talking about the GNU Linux platform, is that the program that you develop or the program that you build, especially when it's part of the operating system and it's not an actual application, like for instance Kden Live or Steam or you know, any like GIMP or Blender or something like that. Instead of it being an application, we're talking about the actual operating system. This is the critical parts that get you into a screen that you can work with and use your computer. It's a very important part of the jigsaw. So it's not like you can go, okay, well, I disagree with those terms and conditions, and then you throw those terms and conditions out and now you can't use GNOME because login D is not going to work. So you're having to be forced to move and change and probably try and use a different project or start your own project to overcome the problem. You know, things like that. when the program starts to do things like that, then alarm bells should start be ringing in people's heads. And that's what the real issue is here with the SystemD. And I think people really need to stop perverting this. I have heard in the mentions, and I have read the website saying that, it's like, Microsoft storming through the Linux, system. Well, in a way, you can see what they're saying, because you can compare it to the Microsoft business model of, in a sense, providing a SystemD that really anything that's programmed in SystemD is only compatible with SystemD, which is exactly how the business model of Microsoft works. So you can see where they're coming from with that. But when they're elaborating it and perverting it and exploding it into this humongous gobbledygook of molasses, if I can even call it that, then you're thinking, what on earth the heck are they saying? And then the next parties are jumping on that one and then arguing that one back with this big scream or whatever. It's like just ends up with like a molasses and Marmite mixed together, and somebody come along and stick a stick of dynamite in the middle and says, yeah, watch him go. It's not a good thing. It's certainly not something to be proud of, to be in slagging off each one project to another project. That I've seen it for many years, yes, and it happens and whatever, and obviously here's a great example between the SystemD and the traditional init systems. But the point is clear that SystemD needs to the developers and contributors, or anybody else even from that matter that wants to get involved in the project, have got to find a way of making modules that can be used in the SystemD and built to be used with SystemD, to be taken from that and literally just plugged straight into, let's say, OpenRC. I use OpenRC as an example because that's the init system that I've used for donkey's years and appreciate. So you can take one from one and put it straight in the other. It doesn't break any other program. With it not breaking any other program and it working like that, then the user can choose whichever way he wants to go, whichever program he wishes to use. His other programs don't get broken, his other programs don't fall apart. He's not forced into having to use KDE instead of GNOME if he wants to use GNOME. And therefore it maintains the user's choice and freedom. That is the fundamental principles, or one of the pure fundamental principles of the GNU Linux system. And if you develop any program, anything, especially part of the operating system, which is an init script system, it must, without any question of a doubt, respect those core values. Otherwise, what the hell is it doing on a GNU Linux platform? You have to respect that. And the benefits, obviously, of respecting that and it fitting in is actually quite wealthy, because everything can be ported from one to the other and everything from the other to the other, which therefore means that when everybody contributes to a project, let's say LoginD, then everybody using every init system enjoys that contribution that's been put into it. And it means that somebody who isn't, let's say, the OpenRC init system contributes something to LoginD. The people who are using SystemD with the LoginD also benefit from that contribution. That's how it works, and it's always worked like that. So to have a system that's, in a sense, currently selfish is going to get criticism. And have people, in a sense, not feel comfortable with it. So it's one of those things that's obviously still in its development stages, and I'd like to see it sort of develop, and there's absolutely nothing stopping the guys at SystemD breaking apart, very much like the GDK and the Qt libraries, and WebKit GDK, and things like that, breaking these elements apart into sort of library packages with their API in, that can then be used as part of, let's say, OpenRC, which would then pull all of the features into OpenRC. But obviously it is still SystemD, but allows the OpenRC to actually operate SystemD modules as well as operate scripts, which people like about the OpenRC factor, because it has these scripts they don't have to reboot. And obviously, as I say, if they've got a module there or whatever, then they can recompile it, this, that, and the other. The OpenRC system's still running, and they can just push the compiled binary in there, and then restart their SystemD scripts or whatever without having to reboot the system. So ideas like that and development points like that for the SystemD development stage is great things. It's difficult though in some projects. You can't have, let's say for instance, somebody like me who went in there and just decided to do something like that and revolutionise the SystemD project. It doesn't really work like that. So it's a project, and it's a team effort, and everybody has to contribute. So it's not something that anybody can just go in there, storm in there, and just do it. That said, somebody could fork the project and then do a fork of it, but then if it's not accepted by the SystemD community, then again you've got a problem. But that would certainly bring to light what the intentions and whatever are from the SystemD development community really are like. Are they actually really selfish people and only interested in that? Could that be the truth? That's speculation, and I'm not even going to go there, but could be a thing. So I'm going to put this comment that I wrote here, which is quite lengthy, and the video is getting a little lengthy. As I say, it's become quite a complex subject, so I don't think it's something that you could explain really very easily in just a quick sentence without people understanding, because people obviously, again, in the one impression, and what they're doing is that it's the same old saying, the front of the at the front of the line, in war, the sergeant turns around to his soldier and says, "Go back and ask the captain to send reinforcements." And he gets back, and by the time he gets back or whatever, it turns out that he says, what's it wants you to send 3 and 4 pence instead of sending reinforcements. So things like that occur, and things change along the way when it's people perceive things differently, they hear things differently, they think they've read it correctly, but in fact they've read it and they think you mean something totally different. So it's perceptions can be a problem as such. Actually, as I say, I put down here that Comp Fusion and so on and so forth. I mean, there was a beautiful concept of it, and KDE pretty much reused that entire code by taking Comp Fusion and then sort of merging it into the KDE desktop environment as a complete unit, making the KDE desktop environment include it, so you don't have to use Compass Fusion as a separate project, this, that, and the rest of it, blah 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 blah. and but as I say, in fact, that actually probably breaks the. I don't quite know how they how KDE have done that actually, as I say, because I'm not part of the KDE whatevers, but the it's because obviously, as I say, if somebody puts a update into Compass Fusion, obviously somebody in the KDE department or whatever has got to sort of take that from the Compass Fusion and put it into the KDE tree one way or another. So I'm not sure how they handle that. So and as you can see, issues like that can be directly looked at and then seen as issues with the current SystemD situation. So yeah, it's these things are as a user on the GNU Linux platform, or if even a person who takes a great interest in the GNU Linux platform, it's something that I think you need to keep an eye out on, and understand what's going on, and understand what GNU Linux is really all about. It's free as in gratis. You don't pay anything for it, which is a big attraction to corporations, companies, and most people. But the platform, allows for the ability to do anything you want. Not condoling, or agreeing with anybody who uses software for illegal activities. Even it be something as silly and as simple as decrypting or copying a DVD so that they can put it onto their hard drive or whatever on earth it is that they wish to do with it. It doesn't matter, but you shouldn't have computer systems or software systems put in place by anybody that restricts you from doing that. If they don't want you doing it and it's an illegal act to do it or whatever, then if you did do it and you went out on a car boot or a market store or sold it on the internet on a website or something like that, and you made illegal profits from it, then that's the point that they should arrest you and charge you, fine you, or put you in prison because you've broke the law. Your computer system is not judge and jury. Your computer system is not a law enforcement, copyright enforcement, dictating machine. It is your computer system, and you should have the right to do anything you please to do with it, provided you do not harm anybody else. And it's that simple. So, anyway, my good YouTubers, we've been ranting for a while here, and I hope this has been informative and gave you a more enlightened view on the problems and why the SystemD is, in a sense, not welcomed as well as many people would want it to be welcomed. It's certainly not as bloated as or how would we put it? It's not as over exaggerated issues as many people are making it out to be, but there is problems there, and some people that feel very strongly about their ability to fully 101% control their system, and transparency in their software, and transparency and power in their computer systems, power over their computer systems by themselves, obviously will take this situation and take this dilemma much more serious and probably will shout much louder, which doesn't help anybody really. The only way that it helps is if people, you know, calmly speak and just come down to a communicatable level and start to actually just discuss the issues and figure out a way of fixing them. Because I actually think that SystemD is, you know, a really good idea, and I think I like the way that they've done it, but I dislike it primarily due to the fact that you can't take a SystemD object and put it into something else. And if the SystemD object is saying, well, no, you've got to do this, got to do that, got to do the other, otherwise it won't work, then you've got a problem. You know, the software is not supposed to tell you what to do. The software is supposed to do what you want it to do. And that is the critical, crucial issue. So, on that note, I shall leave you to it. I shall put, you know, the texts, obviously, that you can see here in this comment, you know, up on my website. Probably even with this video embedded in at the bottom. So yes, and with a bit of luck, all of that has been recorded, so you know, we shall wait and see how it turns out to be. So anyway, thank you very much indeed for your time, my good YouTubers, and I look forward to you hearing up to my next video as and when I'm able to get one to you. Take it easy, stay safe. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye.